Chris,
Does the gentleman yield for some questions?
will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes. Gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Chairman Buckley. I want to, since we're talking about the whole bill, have a chance to ask you some questions about SB2. So first, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The student has to be accepted by the private school before they can get the voucher. Is that correct?
Well, they can apply for the ESA, get in the program, but they do have to be accepted to and be admitted into a private school enrolled.
And there's no requirement in the bill that the private school must accept a student who is applying for the voucher.
There's no automatic enrollment. No, they do not have to.
So the ultimate decision about who participates in this program lies with the private school, not the parent. Is that correct?
Yeah, it relies on the admission standards and what a private school will do to make sure that it's a good fit for that child to receive the best education.
So it's not so much school choice as it is the school's choice. Is that correct?
No, it's parents' choice. I mean, a parent chooses that pathway, and they're the ones that are driving driving that decision, and parents will seek the environment that's best for their kids. That's what happens in my district, anyway.
But we just established that the ultimate decision doesn't lie with the parent. It lies with the private school that can deny admission to any kid for any reason.
Well, there's standards in as far as transfers in public schools where they don't take every transfer, every child that shows up. If they want to transfer, they don't even allow students to transfer from campus to campus. There's always a standard for admittance.
But the local
unless your zip code dictates it.
But the local neighborhood school can't deny you admission. Is that correct?
If you're in the zone, you're admitted.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the fiscal impacts of this bill. What is the projected cost of the bill in the first biennium?
$1 billion.
And what is the projected cost of the bill in the second biennium?
Well, it's projected and it's based upon estimates and guesses of students that would participate. And at this time we just don't know. And it's in the future it's entirely subject to appropriation.
But Legislative Budget Board does forecast what it will cost in the second biennium in the fiscal note.
Yeah, they make an estimate using assumptions.
And what is that estimate for what this program will cost in the second biennium?
Oh, I'll have to look it up. It's an estimate, but it is subject to this body, the appropriation.
Sure, I understand how that process works, but I'm asking what the estimate is for the cost of the program in the second biennium.
Well, based on some of their assumptions and all that, it could increase to levels $3 billion a year. It may or may not do that. We literally don't know, and it is subject to appropriation. So it'll really be whatever this body decides to invest.
So the forecast is that in the second biennium, this program would cost $7.1 billion. Is that correct?
That's LBB's assumptions.
Yes, and in the Education Committee, you called the Legislative Budget Board that wrote this fiscal note, quote, the gold standard.
Well, it's gold standard for what we do here. It's required that the LBB weigh in on fiscal notes on all legislation that we
So the gold standard, the LBB is projecting that this voucher program will grow to $7.1 billion in the second biennium.
Yeah.
The school finance bill we heard earlier, what was the total cost of that?
It was about $8 billion.
I want to talk about who will be getting these taxpayer funds. Do you know what the Legislative Budget Board is forecasting for what percentage of voucher recipients in the first year will be students already enrolled in private school?
They make a certain assumption. I don't recall what they
Is it true that the Legislative Budget Board is forecasting that 65% of the voucher recipients in the first year will be students who are already in private school?
Yeah, that's the assumption that they're operating under in their analysis.
In the second year, the LBB is estimating that 78% of the voucher recipients will be kids who are already in private school. Does that sound correct to you?
That's their assumption.
And that's exactly what we've seen in other states, Mr. Chairman, that the vast majority of the voucher money ends up going to parents who are already sending their kids to private school to begin with.
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why the costs explode
Yeah.
in the out years. In Arkansas, do you know what percentage of current voucher recipients were already in private school to begin with?
I'm not advised on that.
It's 82%. In New Hampshire, do you know what percentage of current voucher recipients were already in private school to begin with?
I do not.
It's 75%. In Florida, do you know what percentage of current voucher recipients were already in private school to begin with?
I'm not aware of that.
It's 70%.
Okay.
In fact, I can't find a single state where the majority of voucher recipients weren't already in private school to begin with. So with this bill, we're taking money out of general revenue that could go to our underfunded public schools, and we're giving that money to parents who are already sending their kids to private school. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it's really unknown who will apply. We do know that low-income, low-income families and single parents, and at least in my district, are participating in private schools now. And these are not wealthy families, and they would certainly qualify under this bill. And I think it's entirely appropriate that they are here to that they're able to apply for this and gain some assistance in sending their kids to the school of their choice.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to go off the best numbers we have, which is from the gold standard, in your words, the Legislative Budget Board, and they are forecasting that the vast majority of the students who get this voucher are going to be kids who are already in private school.
Yeah.
You said that this program costs $1 billion in the first year. Do you know if we gave that $1 billion to our underfunded public schools, how much that money could raise teacher pay for each teacher in the state of Texas?
I don't have that calculation in front of me.
It's roughly $3,000. So that $1 billion that we're sending to parents who already have their kids in private school, if we send it to our underfunded public schools, we could raise teacher pay by another $3,000. If we sent that $7 billion that this voucher is forecasted to cost in the second biennium, do you know how much that would raise teacher pay across Texas?
I do not.
About $11,000.
Yeah.
So in the second biennium, if this program does grow to $7 billion, we could take that money and give it to teachers for an $11,000 pay raise.
Yeah, but today I appreciate you joining me in investing in our public schools earlier in the day to provide historic funding for those schools. And so, what we're showing here in this body is that we can fund our public schools, provide teacher pay raises, and give parents an option using a totally separate funding source outside of our foundation school program. And directing, and then also providing through general revenue the possibility of families having an option.
And Chairman, I voted for that bill in committee and on the floor, but I also made the point on this back mic that it was inadequate to the crisis that our schools are facing, that it doesn't even catch our schools up to 2019 funding levels. Yeah. And every budget decision we make is a choice. Every dollar that we are spending on kids who are already in private school is a dollar that we're not spending on our underfunded public schools. 98% of public school students are attending a district that doesn't have the recommended number of counselors on campus. Do you know how much that $1 billion that we're spending in the first year on this voucher program, how many counselors we could hire?
I do know that House Bill 2 gave historic pay raises to counselors in Texas.
Based on my calculations, we could hire roughly 12,000 counselors to serve students. That's roughly 12 counselors per district. Does that sound correct to you?
If that's your math, if you could find that many counselors, I guess that amount of money would hire that many.
Maybe we could put some of it to counseling programs to prep the next generation of counselors as well. If we spend the $7 billion that this is forecasted to cost in the second biennium, that would be 84,000 new counselors across the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. Does that sound correct?
I'm not advised on the math, but if you say so, I agree.
On average, Texas teachers spend nearly $1,400 per year on school supplies. The Houston Chronicle reported that Texas teachers spend more money on out-of-pocket school supplies than teachers in any other state. So I'm looking at this, and we could wipe out those out-of-pocket expenses for all 300,000 Texas public school teachers with just half of what this voucher program is projected to cost in the first year alone, about $500 million.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Talarico, for
move
what
to
purpose?
extend the gentleman's time.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Gentleman's time is extended.
Chairman Buckley, is it true that we currently have public school choice options currently in the state of Texas, magnets, academies, career and technical schools, public charter schools that currently have long wait lists?
In some parts of Texas, there are wait lists for charters and things.
Probably the same parts of Texas that have private schools in them. A majority of counties in the state of Texas don't have a single private school in them, as you know, Chairman. So with the $1 billion that you want to spend on this private school voucher program that will predominantly benefit people who are already sending their kids to private school, we could open more magnets, more academies, more career and technical schools, more public charter schools, eliminate the wait list,
Yes.
and provide real school choice options to every student in Texas. Is that not correct?
Well, SB2 is real school choice options. It provides the one link there that we don't have yet, and that's parent-directed funding to a school of their choice.
But, Chairman, we established in the beginning of this back and forth that the ultimate choice for your program does not lie with the parents. It lies with the private school. It's not school choice, it's the school's choice, because private schools can deny admission to any kid for any reason they want. And so I'm talking about real school choice, which I support and have supported since I got to this body. If we used your $1 billion, instead of giving it to families who are already sending their kids to private school, we could eliminate the wait lists on these real school choice options and expand those options for more families across the state of Texas, could we not?
We are expanding options today through SB2 to give our parents an additional option besides their public school, a charter school, and whether that's a public magnet school, a P-TECH school. There's all kinds of options. This is simply another tool in the toolbox for parents to utilize when it's in the best interest of their children.
As we established, this is a new option for kids who are already in private school. So the only option you're providing, is for
not true.
parents who are sending their kids to private school to get a discount on their private school tuition.
This is absolutely an option for kids currently in public school.
Currently in public school?
Absolutely. With ESAs, their parents can access an ESA and take their kids to private school.
If the private school accepts them, correct?
Absolutely. Just like any other endeavor in school. Like I said, except if your zip code requires you to attend a certain school, then you have automatic admission. Any other way, there is some sort of admission criteria.
So instead of sending $1 billion in the first biennium and $7 billion in the second biennium to those underfunded neighborhood schools that have to take every student, that have to take the state test, that have to follow state rules, we are now going to send that money to unaccountable private schools where the parents are already paying tuition.
We are sending $8 billion to Texas public schools.
And it's not nearly enough.
We're going to use $1 billion to give parents the options they so readily deserve.
And that $8 billion doesn't even catch our underfunded schools up to 2019 funding levels as we established earlier. I want to ask about curriculum. So unlike public schools, we as lawmakers, the parents of this state, have no say on the instruction funded by our taxpayer dollars used at private schools. Is that correct?
That's correct. Private schools have the autonomy to offer the curriculum that meets the needs of their students and their parents. And parents have the ultimate say about that. Parents can vote with their feet.
So
they can apply to a school based on the curriculum or not apply.
And as I've said many times in our committee, I think parents are the most important factor in a child's education.
I agree.
But parents are not the only ones who pay for education in this state. Those who don't have kids, those who have kids who are grown, they are also paying for our education system. So I want to ask you...
And parents that have kids in private school right now are paying taxes for their kids to go to public school, but they're choosing not to do so, so they're paying twice, Mr. Talarico.
And those public schools they are paying for through their taxes are open to them, correct?
I'm sorry?
Those public schools that those private school parents are paying for through their taxes, those schools are open to them if they choose to attend them.
Depends on their zip code.
Are you saying there's a zip code that doesn't have public schools?
No, but there's a zip code sometimes where you may live there and pay taxes, but you go to another zip code to take your kid.
And that's your choice?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So under this bill, could our taxpayer dollars be used to host Drag Queen Story Hour?
Drag Queen Story Hour?
If a private school decides to have Drag Queen Story Hour, our taxpayer dollars will now fund that Drag Queen Story Hour.
This bill does not infringe on what our private schools can do.
So that's a yes?
Drag queen story hours are in many of our public schools.
So that's a yes. Our taxpayer dollars now will be going to drag queen story hour if private schools choose to do that.
I don't think there's an assertion that would happen.
What about private schools that choose to teach critical race theory, which has been banned in Texas public schools? Will our taxpayer dollars under your bill now go to fund critical race theory instruction in private schools?
Private schools have the autonomy to select the curriculum they want to teach. And parents ultimately have the autonomy to attend or not.
Exactly, but now my taxpayer dollars are going to be going to fund that critical race theory instruction in a private school if they choose to teach that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, your taxpayer dollars right now, Mr. Talarico, are paying for all sorts of activities in public schools across Texas.
That's incorrect. I was here on the House floor when we banned critical race theory in our public schools.
Yeah.
The point is, in a public school, the curriculum is informed by the taxpayers and by their elected representatives. That is not true in a private school. There is no democratic process to determine what's taught. There are no rules. There are no mechanisms to enforce taxpayer accountability.
But these the funds go towards tuition for the school, and ultimately, the part that's hard for some folks to grasp is that parents have this ability to decide whether or not that's the setting they want their kid to be in or not.
And we have no problem with parents making that choice. They can currently make that choice today. What you're asking us to do is take our taxpayer funds and give those funds to unaccountable private schools that don't have to be accountable to the taxpayer.
These schools are accredited, and they're ultimately accountable to parents.
And as we established, parents aren't the only ones who pay for public schools. All of us pay for public schools, and that's why public schools are accountable to us. It's why we can run for school board. It's why we can elect state reps who can determine what's taught and what's not taught. None of that will be true for private schools, as you've already admitted. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, if you repeat that, please.
I'll move on. Under this bill, we would be sending billions of taxpayer dollars to unaccountable private vendors to implement this school voucher program. Are you aware that Odyssey is one of the out-of-state private vendors that are lobbying for this bill here at the Texas Capitol?
I believe they are a certified education assistance organization that could potentially apply through an RFP to have some part of this program.
Are you aware that in implementing a voucher program in Idaho, Odyssey was caught making at least $180,000 worth of ineligible purchases under their program?
No, and I trust our comptroller's office to have rigid standards to make sure that taxpayer funds are completely protected.
And the comptroller will be the only one who decides which vendors are chosen to get our taxpayer funds under this new bill?
Well, the comptroller will certainly decide the organizations that will manage the program.
And the comptroller, like all statewide officials, can accept unlimited campaign contributions. Is that correct?
Well, you mean the comptroller, him or herself? They're under the campaign ethics laws that you and I operate under.
Are you aware that an out-of-state billionaire who funded primary campaigns against sitting members of this body gave $500,000 to Odyssey, this vendor that we're talking about?
I'm not advised on any campaign donations to anybody.
Is there anything in this bill that subjects these private vendors to existing state conduct and conflict of interest rules?
Yeah, through the RFP process, all of that is vetted by the comptroller as they go through their RFP process and selecting the best value for Texas.
So I just want to get an answer to my question. Is there anything in your bill that subjects these private vendors to existing state conduct and conflict of interest rules?
Our comptroller will obey Texas law to make sure the RFP process is fair.
The bill states that the comptroller may recover taxpayer dollars in cases of fraud and abuse, but it doesn't require them to do so. Is that correct?
Gentleman's time has expired.
Motion to extend, Mr. Speaker.
Members, you've heard the motion. It requires unanimous consent. Is there objection? There is objection.